From the moment Harry Potter set foot in Diagon Alley for the first time, his life changed forever. He saw the world of magic with new eyes, adventurous, hopeful, but also a bit uncertain. After all, he had spent 10 years in the cupboard under the stairs, unaware that magic flowed through his veins. But destiny often hinges on a single choice, and sometimes one chance meeting can reshape everything. This is the story of what might have happened if Draco Malfoy had reached out his hand, not just in arrogance, but in true friendship, on that very first day. Harry's first glimpse of Draco happened in Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. The store bustled with new students and their families, all excitedly fitting themselves for their Hogwarts robes. Harry, feeling out of place, was standing on a small footstool, arms stretched out awkwardly, while Madame Malkin pinned the robes in place. Then in strolled a pale-faced boy with slicked-back, platinum blonde hair, Draco Malfoy. He was accompanied by his mother, Narcissa, whose gaze bore the faintest hint of disapproval for the seemingly modest store. When Draco's haughty gaze fell upon Harry, who was dressed in oversized Muggle clothing, something flickered in his eyes, curiosity mixed with mild contempt. In the original timeline, Draco and Harry had a brief and chilly conversation. Draco boasted about his father, about their pure-blood status, and how some wizard families were simply better than others. Harry left the shop with the impression that Draco was spoilt and bigoted, an impression that would linger, coloring their every future interaction. But let us shift the frame. Suppose Draco's mother, Narcissa, had whispered some kind of caution in his ear before they arrived. Suppose she had told her son that the boy with the messy black hair was, in fact, Harry Potter, the boy who lived. And what if Draco, curious, maybe even a bit starstruck, decided he wanted to make a good first impression? Their conversation would then have gone something like this. Draco hopped onto a neighboring stool, beckoned at Harry's lightning bolt scar, and said, quite politely, "You're Harry Potter, aren't you? I've heard loads about you. My father says you've got a great legacy." The arrogance might still show, but there'd be a warmth, however tentative, behind those words. Harry, taken aback by a wizard his age speaking kindly, would lower his guard. The two might exchange polite smiles, with Draco offering tidbits about Hogwarts and Quidditch. He might even joke lightly about how the Slytherin team always wins, or how his father had threatened to buy the entire team new brooms, simply to give them an advantage. Harry would find it a bit odd, but also somewhat impressive. Someone who wasn't shy about his connections, but also seemed genuinely interested in being friendly. A simple shift like this could, ironically, be enough to plant the seeds of a budding friendship. Upon departing the road shop, Narcissa might see them chatting and give her son an approving nod, deciding that if Harry Potter liked Draco, it could only bring good tidings for the Malfoy name. And so, the first domino would have fallen. Fast forward to the Hogwarts Express. In the real timeline, Harry chose Ron Weasley's company over Draco's condescending invitation. But in this alternate scenario, Draco might have invited Harry to sit with him. Instead of that infamous run-in with the Weasley twins, though it might still happen, Draco could have pulled open the compartment door and waved Harry inside, explaining that he had saved him a seat. Imagine Harry's slight hesitation. He sensed that Ron was a decent, kind boy, but Draco had already reached out in Diagon Alley, being oddly considerate for someone so apparently proud. Harry would do what Harry does best, trust his instincts in that moment. He might nod at Ron, but step into Draco's compartment out of curiosity, drawn by the lure of wizarding knowledge and the novelty of someone from a wealthy, wizarding family wanting to be his friend. Ron might have ended up overhearing their conversation from the corridor, feeling initially put out. Meanwhile, Draco is in the compartment, proudly explaining Hogwarts tradition, house politics, Quidditch positions, and, as always, bragging about Slytherin's track record. But in this version of events, Draco would do so with a sense of humour that Harry found strangely endearing. He wouldn't just say, "Slytherin is the best." He'd add in some wry comment about how they even had their own underground dorms by the lake. That sounds quite cool to an 11-year-old who'd only known a cupboard under the stairs. Soon after, Hermione Granger might have knocked on the compartment door, asking if anyone had seen Neville Longbottom's toad. In that moment, Draco might have made a cheeky comment, less insulting than in the original timeline, but definitely a bit aloof, and Hermione, unimpressed, would take note. However, Harry, now feeling that Draco is not entirely unkind, would probably speak up more politely to her. Maybe he would say, "We haven't seen the toad, but we'll keep an eye out." Draco might just shrug, but you'd see him stifle a sneer out of deference to Harry. A small gesture, but enough that Hermione catches on to the subtle group dynamic. It's still not the friendliest of welcomes, but it's leagues better than open scorn. The sorting ceremony arrives. In the real story, Harry begs the Hat not to put him in Slytherin, partly influenced by Draco's behaviour and Hagrid's warnings. However, in this alternate world, his perspective on Slytherin might be less harsh. He's got Draco, who's acted friendly. Maybe Harry's not so terrified of the snake emblem. Still, the Hat senses the complexities of Harry's personality, bravery, loyalty, but also cunning and ambition. And this time, because he sees that Draco is no longer an immediate symbol of negativity, the Hat might push Harry gently towards Slytherin. Harry's not as opposed to the idea, recalling how Draco said the house dorms are near the lake and how it's the house of cunning and resourcefulness, qualities Harry is only beginning to discover within himself. In this scenario, if Harry's acceptance of Draco's friendship weighs on his mind, he might just slip into the Slytherin seat with a sense of relief. Let's pause for a second and imagine the scene. Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter taking seats at the Slytherin table, high-fiving or at least grinning conspiratorially. Meanwhile, the Gryffindor table shares uneasy glances, with Ron Weasley puzzling over the new arrival. Harry Potter in Slytherin? Hermione might be scribbling something in her notebook, uncertain how Harry ended up there. This is the moment that sets the stage for a radically different Hogwarts experience. In the weeks that follow, Draco and Harry forge a bond built around Quidditch talk, pranks in the corridors, and nightly study sessions in the Slytherin common room. One might imagine Draco being quite proud to show Harry around the dungeons. He'd point out secret passageways, occasionally dropping references to his father's old stories about Hogwarts. In return, Harry would share about his Muggle upbringing, and Draco, less prejudiced in this alternate timeline, might find it fascinating. Sure, there might still be a whiff of condescension, but Draco's curiosity about the Muggle world would override immediate scorn. He'd be asking questions like, "So, is it true you have these boxes with pictures moving inside them called televisions? And people actually fly in huge metal contraptions called aeroplanes?" Draco might still be Draco, but this open-minded version would amuse Harry instead of alienating him. Classes wouldn't drastically change for Harry, although his social circle certainly would. Rather than relying on Ron and Hermione for help with classes, Harry would pair up with Draco for potions, where they excel under Professor Snape's watchful eye. In fact, Snape, seeing the boy who lived in his house, might show slightly more encouragement, or at least less overt hostility. Through Draco's influence, Harry could become more adept at potions than in canon, forging a surprising alliance with the prof, who once held such disdain for Harry's father. But not everything would be rosy. Hermione, still a studious Gryffindor, might clash with Draco's penchant for being the center of attention. Ron, seeing Harry so cozy with Draco, could develop a grudge, feeling betrayed, especially after that tense moment on the train. The animosity that originally existed between Draco and the Gryffindors would now be directed at Harry as well, stirring rumors like, "Harry Potter is turning dark," or "He's just as bad as the Malfoys." Fred and George might make jokes at Draco's expense. "We hear you've tamed the Slytherin serpent, Harry," leading to comedic but pointed pranks. And Harry, caught between the reality that Draco is actually being good to him and the fact that all his Gryffindor yearmates see Draco as a snake in the worst sense, might struggle to find balance. In time, the events of the first year would come to pass. The troll in the dungeon scenario might play out similarly, except that Draco and Harry, lurking around the dungeons, might stumble upon the troll first. Instead of Ron and Harry saving Hermione, it might be Harry and Draco bridging the gap to help her out, an event that could begin to mend Draco's frosty relationship with Hermione. But it wouldn't be as simple as a sudden best friendship. Draco might still feel that Hermione was too bossy. She might still be irritated by his smugness. But this life-threatening incident might plant seeds of mutual respect. As the year progresses, the quest to uncover the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone still exists. Quirrell is still possessed by Voldemort, and the final confrontation looms. But now, the dynamic changes. Draco, ironically enough, might be the voice whispering caution. Father said never to meddle in anything that doesn't concern you, especially if it's dangerous. But Harry's reckless sense of heroism, combined with Draco's desire to prove himself worthy, both to Harry and, secretly, to his father's grand expectations, might drive the pair to investigate. Their obstacles would shift from bickering with each other to cooperating. Harry's natural bravery and Draco's cunning forging a more effective team. Hermione might also join them, tentatively, if only because it's a puzzle that requires all their intellectual resources. The moment they descend into the trapdoor beneath the three-headed dog, there's tension in the air. Draco's fear is tangible. He's never done anything so dangerously against school rules before. But once they get through the challenges, Fluffy, the Devil's Snare, the Flying Keys, and the chessboard, they face Quirrell. Here is where Harry's loyalty to his friends might shine brighter than ever. Draco, though not thoroughly redeemed in the sense of being a wholly good person, would stand by Harry's side. He might verbally taunt Quirrell, use cunning and quick thinking to distract him, or help Harry avoid a curse. And when Harry comes face to face with Voldemort's spirit and the Mirror of Erised, Draco might be there, trembling but unwilling to flee. The result, Harry still ends up with the stone, protected by Dumbledore's enchantment, and Quirrell is left to his downfall. Draco watches Harry risk everything, stepping between mortal danger and a chance to save the wizarding world. At the end of this first year, the shift in house points might be surprising. It's not just Gryffindor racking up the last-minute heroism points. Perhaps Dumbledore acknowledges the unity between Slytherin's Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter, as well as Hermione's involvement, awarding them collectively. Instead of that iconic Gryffindor wins moment, there might be a tie, or even a quiet acceptance that Slytherin, for once, earned it legitimately. The entire Great Hall might be stunned to see Draco Malfoy shaking hands with Hermione, or Harry exchanging a look of relief and victory with him. Year by year, the story changes drastically. The Chamber of Secrets fiasco, with the heir of Slytherin, Draco's father's involvement with the dark arts, the Triwizard Tournament, the Order of the Phoenix, and the infiltration of the Ministry. In every major storyline, Draco's budding camaraderie with Harry forces each scenario down a different path. Would Draco stray towards the Death Eaters when he's got a friend who's championed for the light? Would Harry's presence shield Draco from the influences of Lord Voldemort's ideology? Or would Draco's father eventually sow seeds of doubt in Draco's mind, causing friction and heartbreak? Throughout it all, Draco and Harry's friendship would serve as a bright, if complicated, beacon. They'd bicker, fight, sometimes revert to old prejudices. But if the bond was strong enough, they'd keep coming back to each other. Imagine the tension whenever Lucius Malfoy is around, urging Draco to uphold the family name, to remember his pure-blood heritage. But Draco, shaped by Harry's acceptance, might question how much of that dogma he truly believes. He might find himself bridging the gap between pure-blood supremacy and Muggle-born acceptance, torn between father and friend, tradition and revolution. And by the final battle, the moment Harry confronts Voldemort once and for all, imagine Draco at his side. The pale-haired boy, who once prided himself on purity of blood, might stand there, wand trembling, but pointed at the same target as Harry's. Perhaps it is Draco's final renunciation of his father's values and an embrace of loyalty to the friend who taught him humility. Maybe Draco, having lived a life constantly on the precipice of pride, experiences what true bravery means. When the dust settles, it is not just the boy who lived, but also the boy who chose friendship over prejudice. This alternate timeline doesn't promise an easy journey. Conflicts would be rearranged, some amplified, some softened, Ron and Hermione might take longer to warm up to Draco. Snape's role might be that of a more protective mentor, bridging the gap between fatherly condemnation and genuine care for his Slytherin students. The broader wizarding world might be stunned at seeing a Malfoy stand next to Harry Potter, or suspicious that it's some cunning Malfoy scheme. Jerry, Valona Pera, but the kernel of truth is that Draco's decision to befriend Harry that day in Madame Malkin's, backed by genuine curiosity, maybe even a smidgen of admiration, starts a cascade of different outcomes. In the end, one simple moment can change everything. By offering that handshake as more than a hollow gesture of superiority, by choosing to truly befriend Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy would alter not only his own destiny, but also Harry's, and perhaps even the fate of the entire wizarding world. We may never know exactly how events would have played out, but this alternate narrative reminds us that empathy and choice can bend fate's path in unexpected ways. Or if Draco had dared to befriend Harry, we might well have witnessed a Hogwarts where house lines were blurred, prejudices challenged, and unity found in the unlikeliest of places.